Welcome to the Real Estate Espresso Podcast, your morning shot of what's new in the world of real estate investing. I'm your host, Victor Menashe. This is the weekend edition where we interview notable people from the world of real estate investing. Today is no exception. We have a great guest. He's a repeat guest. He's been on the show several times. He's none other than Mr. George Ross. George was a senior executive within the Trump Organization for many, many years, having worked for Donald for close to 47 years. He's the author of 2 best-selling books on real estate and negotiation. He taught at the law school at NYU for over 20 years, in business for over 60 years, and at 92 years of age, one of the sharpest men I know. All the way from Long Island, New York, welcome to the show, George Ross.
Good to be here, all things considered.
Yes, indeed. Well, George, we've got, right now about 31 million people collecting unemployment benefits in the U.S. We've got the federal lawmakers debating on whether to continue the stimulus money, and if so, in what form. We have literally thousands of properties where tenants have stopped paying rent. And more importantly, I've spoken to investors who have purchased properties where they've got properties occupied, they can't evict, and they can't seem to collect rent. We've got bridge loans that are covering the purchase of these properties that are not covered by the moratorium on foreclosures. And this story is repeating itself all over the country, not only in residential, but in commercial, where the situation's even a lot worse. I know my own commercial property, my rent collection's at about 50%, and I've talked with several folks where their rent collection is in the 5% range. And it seems like there's a looming bloodbath, but on the surface, government's telling us everything's just fine.
Well, I don't know. They're telling you everything's just fine.
Okay.
They're saying everything will work out. There's a big difference.
True. So what's your perspective? If you own commercial property today, be it office or retail, what would you be doing right now? Is there anything you can do right now to protect yourself or protect your business from bankruptcy?
You've got to speak to, this is a trickle-down effect. And landlords have to understand it's a trickle-down effect. That if the tenants can't legitimately pay, they're not going to pay. You'll have to work out something. Like when you say you can't evict them, eventually you will be able to, but not evict. It's a question of how they're going to be treated in the courts. And I think the courts are going to be very lenient. So the best thing you can do with it is like you would do with any situation where there is a downturn and the tenants plead poverty or they can't do it, work out some kind of a deal, work it out over a period of time. I wouldn't go push out for vacant space. You'll just have to be lenient, and you work to your bank as it goes up the line. If you can't pay, if your tenants can't pay you, you can't pay your bank, and you can't pay the mortgage or whatever. You'll have to talk to the bank and say, "Look, I can't do it. We'll work it out." And I think you're going to find they will. Everybody's going to have to pull in the belt a little bit and figure out how do we handle it. I think in the long run it'll be fine. In the short run, where there's shortage of money, you got a problem.
What advice would you have for those that are getting saber rattling from their landlords or saber rattling from their lender?
Again, I don't care who ran as a saber. I don't think the landlords are going to be able to do anything. I don't think the courts will permit it. So my feeling big, you just sit there, pay what you can, and try to work something out. But I wouldn't be terrified that you're going to end up evicted. And that's the answer. Why would you want to end up evicted? Then you got a vacant space. Why would a landlord want to do that? Better to keep a tenant that's paying something or has been there before than to try to throw them out and end up with the space that you're not going to be able to rent until something settles down in this COVID. So it's a difficult situation for sure. But I think you just have to go with it. And I wouldn't worry about it. I say I wouldn't worry. If I were a tenant, I wouldn't worry about not paying the rent. And if I were a landlord, I wouldn't worry about not collecting the rent.
Well, and what about on the commercial side? I mean, the moratorium on evictions, the moratorium on foreclosures is predominant.
It's going to be there. You're going to have to, this is a situation which is totally unforeseen, and the parties will have to try to work it out. The one big difference is this was not caused by an economic downturn.
Right.
All right. This was caused by an act of the COVID, whatever you want, but something that was totally unforeseen. And in the event that it's ultimately taken under control, which I think it will be, then things will get back to some sense of where they were before. So you'll have a situation where you have to accept less money from a tenant or say, pay me out over a period of time. and everybody should work in good faith to try to get back to some degree of normalcy. I certainly wouldn't go for evictions. And if a tenant can't pay the rent, so be it. But I doubt it. If they're just saying, I can't pay the rent because I'm not operating, give me a chance to operate, I would say give them a chance to operate. This is a situation you just have to work through it. There's no norm. This isn't a question that the tenants basically can't say everything is bad and I can't pay. This is a situation where we have a virus and I can't pay now because my business is not there. So you have to wait for the business to get there and some stability that takes place as a result of the virus. And I can't tell you when or how, but do I think it will? Yes. I think if there is one lining or good thing about the virus, then I would say that it is not as lethal as it could be.
Right.
And so a tremendous number of people don't know that they have it because they're asymptomatic. So they don't get it. Or they don't understand, they don't feel that they have it. There's nothing that serious. And if they do get it, unless you're in a group which is has disabilities of some sort or age, it's not that lethal. It really isn't. So it's debilitating, but not that lethal. I don't want to dismiss the fact that a lot of people are dying.
Sure.
Yeah. But a lot of people die from all other illnesses, but it's just you can't pin it down as much as you can to this particular virus. I do think that they will have a vaccine eventually. I don't know when, but meanwhile they have some pretty good therapeutics. Most people going in are not in the hospitals. Are not in such critical condition. They're more than were expected. And it certainly puts a strain on the health facilities. But when you look at the end result, it's not, if you can look at it and say, well, yeah, it's terrible, but, and I think that's where you are. It's a forced downturn. It's not legitimate down. This is not a legitimate business cycle.
Right.
Everybody's going to have to work with it. So my advice to you, if you're a tenant, got a problem with your landlord, don't pay the rent or pay him what you can. And he'll probably say, okay. She'll say, look, I can't pay you now. How about if I pay it, I'll give you as much as I can, or half, or 50, whatever is available. Will there be some more subsidies that are coming from the government? Yes. The government is going to have to, the federal government is going to have to come in and do something like they did before, more stimulus. No question about that. Should they do as much as they did before? I don't know. There's a lot of people making more money when they don't work than when they did work.
That's absolutely true. I mean, some of what we're seeing is certainly breeding dependence within the population. People would rather collect an unemployment check than go to work.
Yeah. It's also a lot of it has to do with this so much that's totally unknown. I mean, realistically, you can test. Suppose that effectively I went and I have no feeling of symptoms. I don't know if I got it or didn't get it. But I have no symptoms of having it, and hopefully you or the people who are listening in don't have it either. But if you went in and you have a test, and the test shows negative, tomorrow it could be positive.
Right.
And the big holdup or the problem that I see, one of the biggest problems, is the fact that it takes so long to get the test results. And now, if you get a test, you take a test, it shows up. It takes you a week to find out that you're negative or positive. Now, what happens if you find out that you were positive? Well, in that week, you could have infected a whole bunch of other people. And what happens if it shows you negative? Then take it again tomorrow. You're liable to be positive. It's so indecisive, indiscriminate that you can't. We just have to say, let's see what happens, and hope it'll work out. Eventually, I think it will. As to when, I don't know. And in the middle time, right now, it's going to be a very scary situation.
Yeah, certainly it's a source of tremendous amount of stress, no doubt for tenants, for landlords, for investors.
How about parents with children?
Absolutely.
Whether you go back to schools, you not go back to schools. And all of the industries which either haven't come back yet or may not come back for a while because they demand mass participation. Sports, restaurants, all of it.
Sure.
Who knows? I don't know the answer to that one. I don't know anybody else does either.
Yeah, absolutely.
But having said that, if you have some landlords, some people with property they're getting very skittish, it could be a very good time to buy.
Is it a good time yet, or is it too soon?
I'm not saying right now.
Okay.
But I'm saying as you see how things develop, but as things develop, there may be a number of them that panic. The panic as to what's happening in the marketplace. Panic is good for the speculator at this who wants to come in, because this is not universal. You don't have a downturn which is caused by economic situations. It's not. This is not everybody's bad, or you're not going to have service companies, or they're not going to be able to sell product. It's just that they were forced to do something different by an act of, we call it an act of God, or call it what you like. But the end result will be when the smoke clears, and it will clear, don't know when, but when the smoke clears, I think you're going to find a tremendous resurgence, because everybody that was out is going to come back. And there'll be people who will do it, as long as there's no change, which makes it impossible to do. But businesses were all right. A lot of businesses are still doing. They figured a way to work out. They're not doing bad. That I know, for example, most of the stores are open in one form or another. Yeah, they don't have the customers, and they're not. But the attendance is way down. But nevertheless, it's not a question that there's such a downturn that they can't make out when things change, that people can go there and get some sense of normalcy.
Now we seem to be in a little bit of a dichotomy as far as the real estate markets are concerned, and of course I know real estate as always is hyper-local, but right across the nation we're seeing many cases where there's very low inventory. There's a lot of demand now surfacing.
Yeah.
Even in my own home market, house a block away from me, because the inventory is so low, sold in one day, 13 offers, 100,000 over asking.
Yeah.
And that story's repeating itself all over the nation.
Yeah. Yeah. That's absolutely true. But then again, it depends on the nature of the real estate that we're talking about. I think you'll have a greater impact on commercial. Commercial, this is different than you have. People always have to have a place to live, so no question. So eventually, whatever is residential will either come back soon or it'll come back later, but it will come back because there's always a need for it. However, commercial is a different story, especially because of the fact that so much is done now online in the internet. So you don't need the space anymore. And I mean, their offices, you don't need a big office. You don't need it. You can do it the same way we're doing it now. Absolutely. On this call, you couldn't do that before. We're talking face to face, and whoever's on the call gets the opportunity to see somebody ask questions and get answers without being in an area where you can do it face to face. Whole different. So my thought would be, certainly for all the people and everyone that listens to this, is get in line with the technology. There's so much that's around there, and so good. You learn how to do it. You can do it. I had a recent situation where I was a mentor involving on a different call, and on the call on the Zoom was also a Zoom. There were 395 members, 395 people that were listening. It's unusual. How can you do that? One call, one situation. My assessment, or basically my comment would be, or my advice, call it advice is now, is if you got real estate, hold on to it. If I think the market changed. If you have commercial real estate, be a little careful as how you're going to handle it, because if somebody goes out, you're going to have a problem refilling the space at the same rent. And if you happen to own the space and it becomes vacant, you're going to figure it's going to take you a while, if not a long time, within which to lease it, because the market just won't be there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
All right. I love George's perspective. Here's someone who's seen many economic cycles, many economic downturns. He witnessed a world war, and he even would have been a young boy during the Great Depression. As you think about what George had to say, have an awesome rest of your weekend. Go make some great things happen. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.